Welcome to the DevReady Podcast. Joining me on the DevReady Podcast today, I have Bill Lennan from California. So, Bill, I don't know much about you, and for those of you listening, this is how I do the podcast. I don't know much about the guests, so it just becomes a better conversation rather than me trying to stick to a script. Bill, why don't you let everyone know who you are and a little bit about you?
Sure, of course. Yeah, happy to. Thank you. And thanks for the invite. I love doing podcasts.
Oh,
So
it's
my name
cool.
is Bill Lennan. I've been working in software engineering here in Silicon Valley, uh, 30 years. Um, and I've seen a whole bunch of stuff over the years. I've spent most of my career in the startup and medium-sized companies space. And at the same time, I've also spent some time at Google and at other big tens of thousands of people sized organizations. Um, I've seen a lot of different things evolve over the years. My focus has been how to help my people operate effectively. I started leading software teams when I had less than 5 years of experience. And My teams did a lot of stuff that I'm super proud of. Like, I got a bunch of amazing people. Um, and I think there's a lot of parts of being successful in the tech space that aren't obvious to people.
Okay.
And when I started in tech really late, like because in college I completely avoided computers. Um, I started in tech when I was 32,
Okay, that is, yeah, a
and
late
learned
career.
learned yeah, and then I learned how to code on my own. Um, and because I started off at a friend's startup doing cold calls as a sales guy.
Hmm.
And then I'm like, what am I selling? Really? How does this stuff work? And he was like, well, why don't you have lunch with the engineers? And two engineers. I mean, that was the whole team, right? And so I just started eating lunch with them and asking them questions. And, they were like, oh, here, read this book. Here's a website. Kind of started to learn a little bit. And then I started helping with QA at night. And so but during the daytime I was calling, and at night I was doing QA. Luckily, the office was close to where I lived, and I would just go there after dinner and do QA.
Hmm.
Um, and 6 months later, they put some of my work into production, and then it kind of went from there. And um, the next company I went to, I had to learn another couple of operating systems, three more programming languages, a couple of databases, and that kind of became like every company was learn more stuff. I only once went to a company where I already knew the tech stack.
Okay, so it's
Um,
quite a variety of different things you're working on and jumping into
yeah,
then.
and one of the things that I learned was that if I could wrap my head around the business problems and what they were trying to accomplish, that was actually more important than knowing the tech stack, even as the guy running the software teams. Um, and and I hired engineers who didn't know the tech stack, but they knew how to talk business problem. They knew how to think through designing algorithms. And the reality is, after you've learned maybe three languages, the fourth one you pick up super fast. And it may only be after your second, like maybe the third one's the fast one. I don't know, but there's some like your
Yeah, it's
velocity of yeah,
the languages are not the hard part because they're all very
right,
similar. Once you move into everything being object oriented, it's all very
yeah,
similar, and it's just how strict are they in their semicolons and
right.
spacing and tabs.
Exactly. Right. Right. Punctuation errors. Right. Exactly. Yeah. I blew my syntax. And so my focus became how to really, number one, help my people operate as good as possible. Um, and number two, how do we make sure that we're doing the best job of supporting the business and helping the business with their growth? And along the way, I realized that there was a bunch of parts of those equations, those goals maybe, that a lot of people just didn't know. They didn't wrap their heads around them. Um, one of the things that happened is, because I'd worked in other industries before I got to tech, there were things that I'd learned to think about from, for example, I worked in a high-end restaurant in college. And that was a very coaching oriented environment. Everybody coached up and down, sideways. That was part of the reason they were so successful. And I brought that to my software teams. And it, I didn't care where somebody was at, who could coach or who could be coachable. And and that meant everybody learned, right? And everybody got to think better and operate better and be more productive and be happier and contribute in different ways, ask awkward questions. Um, and I always, because I always wanted teams to be happy, everything I could think of that went in the direction of them being happier, we tried. And they were also more productive. Those two things go hand in hand.
Yeah, definitely.
Um,
Once you get someone who's happy about what they do, then they become passionate about
yeah,
it and want to deliver more. They invested
yeah,
in it. It's not just a job. They're not just there by the hour. 5 o'clock comes and they leave. And then, yeah, being
exactly.
where you are in the valley, if you're working with a lot of startups, there is no 9 to 5. Like you mentioned, you're doing QA after dinner as a second shift, just so you can learn and be involved.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the things that's cool here is that there's always side projects available to go help other people with, to learn other parts of the industry, and learn other industries, right? Learn other technologies, um, and and if you say yes to those opportunities, it ends up being a really, really good time investment, because you bring knowledge back to your day job and you know how to solve problems that nobody else does, which
Yeah.
is
And
valuable.
yeah, I completely agree with that. My philosophy has always been the more I can learn about anything. So I really love anything to do with a documentary where I can learn something. Somehow something works, then there's another bit of information that I may be able to mix and match and make something else, or join the dots together and create a new solution. So that's been my philosophy for a long time.
Yeah, yeah, it's perfect. Yeah, yeah,
And then touching
that's
on what you said there with sort of the teams and having the right people, where they may not be the
mhm.
best engineer or programmer. From my limited experience with compared to what you would have seen, the ones that are really good programmers, they're either split into, they don't have much of like sort of the personal skills. They're really good coders, and people they like to think that they just belong in a corner and code when they can do a lot more. But then you've got the other ones that can sort of talk and they sort of become the BD or the salespeople for them and lead in, which is the direction I sort of went.
Right, right. Yeah. So one of the things, I used to have really bad social anxiety, right? And when I started in tech, and this is weird, like, I fully appreciate the irony that I started off as a sales role, making cold calls for a company, but I had really bad social anxiety at the same time.
Yep.
Which, yeah, I know, that weird combo.
They couldn't see
Um,
you. That was probably the barrier that let you do it.
well, yeah, because I was like, I really don't want to be, and I don't want to be doing this sales thing. I would rather be coding because get away from people. But then when I started leading teams, I realized that I had to get comfortable with people, because there's a bunch of things that are relating with people that I needed to do to be better at my job, and better at taking care of my people. And so I I went after learning the mental models and the skills and practicing the skills to get rid of my social anxiety. Because one of the ahas that I had along the way is that social anxiety is a learning problem. It's not a biological problem. And I've taught, I came up with a system, um, that worked ridiculously well, because now I like public speaking. So I'm completely the opposite end of the
Yeah,
spectrum.
you can't get any
Yeah.
more opposite.
Yeah. And I've taught a few hundred people now, the same system that I've used, and they all get the exact same results that I did. So I know, I've got a lot of experimental proof that the system works as long as you do it, right? It's like anything else. If you don't
Yeah.
do it, it doesn't work, right? If you don't write the code, nothing happens,
Yeah.
Um, so, but I think, in the technology world, nobody talks about how important it is to be a good communicator in the tech world. And if you are really good at writing code, but you aren't good at communicating, you're not hireable, because everything that we're doing where we're problem solving and we're building products requires communication across the team and really understanding of what's going on. And it requires you to be able to verbalize and contribute. And I need something more than just a robot that's just going to sit and write code based on the words that come out of my mouth or somebody else's. I
Yeah.
need you to be able to think and to be able to communicate effectively. Um, because mine or somebody else's idea of how to solve a problem, it might be terrible. And you might have a great idea. And if you don't verbalize it, then we're going to build something junk. And I don't like building junk product. And so I need you to talk. Um, and so, first thing is understanding the frame of communication for everybody in software engineering is ridiculously important. I would say arguably the reason people get stuck at a level in their software engineering and they can't progress is because they don't learn how to communicate. Because so
Yeah.
many doors open when you communicate, so many different opportunities show up, um, that won't be there otherwise. Like nobody's going to walk over to you and ask you if you want to be on a project if you aren't communicating effectively.
Yeah. Because
Um,
they don't want that extra hassle or the challenge that
yeah,
would bring.
and they don't even know if you're smart or not because you're not
True.
talking, right? In your head, you're thinking you're a genius, but we don't know that because we can't read your mind, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. You have
Um,
to contribute to meetings. You have not just meetings. It's be able to throw out ideas, have a discussion, collaborate.
yeah,
It
yeah,
really is a team effort when you're building things, unless you're a solo person doing it on your own. But even then,
yeah,
at some point, you're going to get stuck. When you're even like when you would have been learning programming, you'd be stuck on an error for hours potentially.
right,
You come
right,
back or you speak to someone, and then they're like, "Oh, you forgot the comma there."
right,
Like
right,
that's all it is.
exactly.
But being
Yeah,
able to communicate and have someone involved helps with
yeah,
that, or just being able to talk it out to them. But it's very important. That's something I learned because we run our own business, so you don't know much about us. So I started when I was in uni this business, so it's been
mhm.
17 years,
Oh, nice.
and we've just learned as we go along the way, and we get people involved. And I learned probably too late that I should be the last person to talk in the meeting and let everyone else have their ideas. Everyone can be right
Yep,
or wrong, it doesn't matter, but the more you hear, the better an idea can get formed, the better the outcome, like you said. Just because I
right.
said something doesn't mean it's right, and it's going to take us down the wrong path potentially.
Yes, yes, yeah, and that's on the plus side. If you continue to be the last one to speak, everybody else will learn to speak up and not wait for you, and especially the shy ones, like
Yeah,
really encouraging them because oftentimes the smartest people in the room are also the shyest. And no offense to the noisy people in the room, but as much as they're comfortable speaking, they're not usually, from an engineering perspective, the best in the room. It's rare
yeah,
when you've got somebody who's really good at communicating and really amazing at engineering at the same time. Like to your point from earlier, people that are really good at communicating and they're also in engineering, they usually end up going over into sales or
yeah.
some or sales support, um, product management.
Yeah, it's more
Um,
the less hands-on role where you're not on
right,
the keyboard,
exactly.
not
Yeah,
bashing out just
yeah,
code.
yeah. And so you do yourself a disservice if you don't figure out, really wrap your head around the idea that communication is critically important, and then find some methodology, whether it's talking to somebody like me to help you work through that fear and build out a system to get rid of your social anxiety. Yeah.
So, are you able to share some points on what that sort of system looks
Oh yeah,
like
of
and how
course.
you
Yeah, yeah.
help people?
So yeah, yeah. So the I'm a incrementalist, right? I believe in learning things in small increments This is how we learn math, right? What's 7 times 3?
21. I said 10 for a
You-
second.
You're like, oh
In my
my
head.
God, I'm on the spot. Right.
Yep.
So 7 times 3 is 21. You're absolutely correct. And I can ask anybody in the world who's gone through multiplication, they all know what that is, right?
Yep.
Because we have a very structured system for teaching people how to learn math. And no matter how far up the math stack you go, everybody starts at the exact same place of learning how to count by single digits.
Yep.
Right? My older son's doing some crazy physics, math. He talks about it, and I'm like, you could be talking a foreign language. I completely don't understand what you're saying. I'm glad you love it, right? But he started with counting and addition and subtraction like everybody else does. And so I believe that everything we do has a system behind it, whether we understand it or not. And if you really want to get good at it, you got to start at the beginning and work your way up. And so for what I did when I started getting over my social anxiety, my first problem was starting conversations with strangers. And so I leveraged a model. BJ Fogg, who's a psychologist at Stanford, wrote a book on this called Tiny Habits. I set myself up for success as much as I could in starting conversations with strangers. I have a time box. It's a 2-minute time box. And
Okay.
the stuff you're doing in that time box, we call a recipe. I would go to Starbucks because I had a really bad coffee habit at the time, and I was going there every day. And I would order a drink, and then when the barista brought me my coffee, I would ask them, "How's your day going?" It was incredibly hard to just ask, "How's your day going?" And that's the opener for the conversation, right? I was sweating bullets the first few times I did that because it was so emotionally challenging. And they would say whatever they were going to say, and I would say, "Thanks, I hope the rest of your day goes well." And then I would leave. And I would congratulate myself outside for doing a rep, because the
Yep.
important part is doing a rep, not how good you do the rep. It's just the fact that
Yeah,
you did the rep,
you just
right?
started. The
Yeah.
progress is
And
moving.
that's the starting point. It took me 2 weeks of doing that every day. And then I realized, oh, this is easy now.
Mhm.
So in 2 weeks, I went from I can't start a conversation with a stranger and I'm sweating bullets to, oh, now I'm starting conversations with this same model with everybody at every retail place I ever go. So like
Yeah, okay.
I would go to the grocery store and I would say at the checkout, "Hey, how's your day going?" Right? It was super easy. Um, and then the next step was I went to 5-minute speed networking events. And I knew it was only 5 minutes, so I had a time box. I had a script. I had scripted out 3 questions to ask in that 5-minute networking event, so I knew exactly what to say, and that was it. Like I, going to ask 3 questions. Um, it allowed me to feel like I had control of the conversation because I
Mhm.
had the script. Number one,
Yep.
and number two, I was never at a loss for words because I had the script written on a piece of. This was face to face networking, like
Yep.
real people, real room, face to face, right? And I went in with a sheet of paper that had my questions on it. And people would be like, "What's with the paper?" And I'd be like, "Oh, I script this stuff so I don't forget what I'm going to say." And they'd be like, "Okay, actually not a bad idea, right?"
Yep.
And it took maybe 3 or 4 of those events. In each one, I'd talk to half a dozen people.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden it was easy. I mean, not all of a sudden, progressively it got to be super easy. And then I started doing 15-minute networking events. I scripted out probably half a dozen, maybe 10 questions. Um, and then 30-minute events. And I didn't create new questions. What I started doing was just riffing. As they'd say something, I'd be like, "Oh, wait a minute, that makes me curious," right?
Okay.
Because emotionally, I was a lot more relaxed. And so the creative part of my brain
Yeah, it starts
could hear
working.
what they said and then ask another question, right? And so by then, I was pretty comfortable talking with people. Um, and so then I'm like, what's the next level? Oh, I need to learn how to present. So I started doing presentations with my software team, even though I didn't need to. Because
Okay.
I said, look, I want to start learning how to present. I don't know the technology very well. Will you guys just volunteer to be my audience to give me an excuse to learn this stuff? And they were like, yeah, sure. Okay, no problem. Go to town. Um, and so I started doing that. And then my boss uh, asked me to start preparing a presentation slide for my teams for him to present to the executives, right? And so I started, I was giving him one slide, right, about stuff we'd been doing, and then he asked me to start presenting that slide, and so it was just little iterations, right?
It's
Little
just
iterations, yeah,
incremental improvements.
exactly, incremental improvements, and then he went on vacation and had me do the whole thing while he was gone,
Yeah.
and um, these were weekly. And so he was gone 2 weeks. I got to do it twice. He came back and said, why don't you keep doing it?
Yep.
And I was like, oh, okay. Sure. And so now I'm collecting stuff from everybody else. And now I'm doing the presentations. And it was this incremental, a little bit more, a little more, a little more, a little more, a little bit more, um, kind of approach. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And
how all skills grow. Sorry to interrupt you there.
oh, no, you're 100%
That's how
right.
everything is. Like, even when you start a developer, you learn the very basics and you build up.
Right.
Same with maths and the way you talk. Like, I don't use questions in a script in this podcast on purpose, because then my brain just tries to stick to the script and tries to touch on all the questions that are listed where it doesn't flow, it doesn't work. I wouldn't have written this down and it just
Right.
wrecked the
Exactly. Right.
conversation. It
Right.
doesn't work, and I can't learn the interesting things because I don't know what I don't know about you yet.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. So that was kind of the progression, and then I started using presentations to pitch ideas to executives, um, so I could get funding for things to make my teams happier. And it was either equipment or training,
Okay.
and I started using the presentations as another training method. I came up with a different system for presenting to the execs so that they would say yes, and they almost always do.
Hmm.
Um, they either say yes or they give me knowledge that I didn't know I didn't know,
Yeah. Okay.
and then I can decide, oh, I need to reformat the pitch, or oh, I don't. I'm done, right? Um,
Yep.
and the 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 times I've gotten a no that I've said, okay, I'm done. It's like 3 times my whole career. Um,
Okay.
yeah, because the system is set up to make them the hero of the presentation,
Yep.
right? It's a huge win for the executive for them to say yes, which requires me to do a bunch of homework. So the other communication piece, the other reason why this is so valuable is that I started talking with people in a bunch of other parts of the organization to learn about how the rest of the business operated, because I wasn't getting enough information through my executives. And that back channel knowledge allowed me to understand a whole lot better about what the sales team was going through, and customer objections, and where customer support was getting recurring complaints, or where they saw things that were like, oh, we're going to get complaints about this. Like it just all the back channel communication. Um, that really helped me understand much better how to help the rest of the business. And also, when I went to talk to the executives for things that were bigger and they broader in scope, like I want to re-architect our core tools platform, and I'm going to change the whole business process as part of it that you've now had for a dozen years here.
Yep.
I can have that conversation because I've got a bunch of allies internally, because I've been talking to all these other people and I've already run the idea past them and they like it because they've given me a bunch of input and I've been able to say, oh, because of your input, I think actually this completely different way of doing business will actually work better for us. And because they've contributed a bunch, they have ownership in it, right? And so when I go talk to the execs, frequently their first question is, oh, have you already run this by so and so and so and so, like, these 5 people, right?
Yeah, you've
And I'm like, oh
preempted
yeah, I
everything.
talked to them before I brought it to you, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to, go talk to them, make sure that they that they really do agree with me. And that way I, as a team lead, have much more influence on the whole product.
So how am I going to phrase this? Is that part of how you then develop better products as well? Because you understand the business, not just
Oh yeah,
the
totally.
tasks that are
Yeah.
for right in front of you for like the next sprint or the next feature release or whatever it is the next quarter. Because you have the overarching business idea, you understand what they're trying to do, then you can move forward in a better direction and serve everyone.
Right. Yeah. And
Yeah.
and no offense to the executives, but they're like the game of telephone, right?
Yeah.
And somebody says something over there, and by the time it gets to me, it's completely garbled. It's just gone through 6 people, right?
Yeah. And there are also several layers removed. So it has to go up and down and filter
Yeah,
through.
yeah. And they don't mean to screw it up along the way, but somebody over there says avocado and I hear steak, right?
Yep.
There's a huge difference there. And so I want to go straight to the source as much as I can. Yes, it takes time. Yes, it means I have to be much better at time management. And yes, in the overall scheme of the business, it is so much more effective than anything else you could be doing. I fully get that at some business size, it's hard to make it scale perfectly, right?
Of course.
But I don't care about perfect scale because, like, when I was at Google, I didn't care what was going on in YouTube because it wasn't impacting the stuff that I was working on. I was in a business silo. And so within the silo, I was talking to all kinds of people. And because of the way Google is, business silos tend to be international, right?
Yeah, it's probably it's a big enough business on its own each silo.
Yeah. So, I'm like, okay, today I'm talking to somebody in Mountain View. Tomorrow I'm talking to 2 people in Italy and somebody in South Africa. Because that's the way that it works, right? And so I'm trying to figure out all the inputs and get all the data because my boss doesn't have a clue.
Yep.
Right? Because his boss doesn't have a clue either, right? Like the whole stack nobody's back channel it.
Yep.
And so, that's the job, is to go and find out all that stuff because, being able to get people, task delegation, or them choosing the tasks they want through Agile, right? Doesn't take that much time. Getting all the stories and all the tasks and all the epics and everything
the
written
time's
up
taken in
and having them be
understanding
well enough written that everybody
what to
understands
build
what's
and if it's
going
the
on.
right thing to build.
It doesn't take that much time. So you actually have time to go do that industrial espionage inside the company and
Yep.
and really find out what the heck is going on and be able to think much better about how to solve problems.
Yep. And in a really simple way of explaining that, that's the whole philosophy behind what we do with our DevReady. So we get people DevReady without jumping into code and understanding what is the business actually trying to do. And then it really comes down to, are you solving a symptom or the actual cause? Because a lot of people try and solve symptoms, and you've probably seen that throughout your whole career. Something's happened, let's fix that. Something happened again, let's fix that. All right. What's the underlying thing that caused all of those? That's what has to get re-engineered and architected to solve the business needs, not this person's immediate issue that has to get fixed. So we stuck that name on things, then we can talk to people and let them understand that. We need to understand what your business is trying to do, how you want to achieve those goals, what value
Yep.
you're going to bring to your team or your users, depending what sort of product it is, before we touch any code.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's, what you're talking about is doing a lot of homework up front,
Yep.
which, makes sense, so you understand what to be doing. Um, I think there are contexts where, like, the first product that I ever worked on, no one had ever done anything like that before.
Oh,
Um,
well, okay.
and so, like, we didn't have any models to look at, right? We were like, we've got this brand new idea. We're going to build this thing out, and we're going to go. We think these are the first. We built the first snow cams that went up in Tahoe.
Okay.
And this was, I have gray hair, right? Where I have hair, it's very
Yeah,
gray.
that
This was
technology would
back
have
when
been very limited.
technology is super primitive. Everything was dial-up back then.
Oh, okay, yep.
And
All right.
so we couldn't do streaming video. All we could do was still images. So
Yep.
we wrote some really simple code where you'd have a camera hooked up to a computer. It would take a picture and then FTP it off, FTP, right?
Yep.
It off to the server. And, it would do like one every 5 minutes, right? And you could look back historically and see what had happened.
Okay.
Nobody, like, that didn't exist before we put these things in, right?
Yeah, okay.
And so we had to figure the whole stack out. And then I had to go and demo it at ski resorts because, we tell people, oh yeah, live camera on the web. And they'd be like, what are you talking about?
And
You
then you
know?
have to fill in 5 minutes every time just to see the different frame update.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, luckily it was like every 5 seconds, as long as they had a decent
Okay.
dial-up connection,
Yep.
the cycle rate was pretty good. But still, it wasn't sometimes the connection was junk, and it would be 5 minutes, right? And I'd be like, yeah,
Yeah.
it'll update in a minute. Your phone lines aren't the best in the world, right? Sorry. But the cool thing was people would be like, oh, that's really, like, now there's pictures to back up our phone
Lines.
voicemail, because people could call and go to the voicemail and they would
Okay.
get the snow report, right? But now they
Yep.
could say, by the way, if you want to see it online, go to our website, right? Much better social proof if you can actually see the image
Of
of
course.
what the camera's saying. So um, that was super fun. But yeah, basically our whole thing was get the technology to work first, and then let's go see what we can do with it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's very early pioneering days.
Yeah. Yeah. It was super early. Yeah.
So out of
Yeah.
that career that you've had, what was probably one of the challenging teams that you tried to work with and you've turned it around? Because it seems like you've had a lot of success, but I'm sure there's been some stumbling blocks along the way. But yeah, getting through that system and the way you've talked through things, I can see
Yeah.
you'll find a way to get over them regardless of what it is.
Yeah. So great question. There's a couple of them. One of them was a, a, a team that, the day that I started, I'm going to do all the onboarding, right? And the CTO at the end of the meeting goes, I hate to tell you this, but I'm giving you the worst performing team in the company. They've been
Fantastic.
together for 8 to 10 years. We've done everything to try to make them more efficient, and it hasn't worked. Good luck. And I said, okay, that's nice, nice cheerleading speech there.
Yeah. It's a
Thank you
great
very
welcome
much.
gift.
I didn't say that out loud, but I was thinking, like, great, okay. And so then I was like, I'll do what I can, right? And 6 months later, I'm sitting at my desk working on stories, and he comes over and goes, "Hey, Bill, can I talk with you for a few minutes?" I go, "Yeah, of course. What's up?" And he goes, "Come to my office." I'm like, "Okay." I go in. He closes the door and he turns around and he goes, "What have you done to your team?" And I said, I don't know. What are you talking about?" And he said, "I gave you the worst performing team in the company, and I've been trying for years to make them better. They are now the best performing team in the company.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Their coding throughput has gone up by 40%. What did you do?" And at that time, I didn't know how to explain what I was doing. And I said, "I take really good care of my people." And he said, "Well, I don't know how to do that. You have to tell me what you're doing." And I said, "Well, when I figure it out, I'll tell you."
Hmm.
And he said, "Okay." And I left. And And it wasn't until a few years later that my partner and I came up with the framework that we teach now, which is mental models. Mental models are beliefs, right? And
Yep.
part of my research, what I've learned is that a lot of software team leads have self-limiting beliefs, self-limiting mental models. And because I had a stack of mental models that were not so limiting, I was doing things they wouldn't do, which benefited my team.
Yep.
I have a stack of emotional resilience skills that I use for performance. And the way that plays out is that there's things that, as a team lead, they're scary to do. Like the first time I went to pitch an executive and tell him I needed $40,000 to get new equipment for my team.
That would have been a fun conversation. The
Well,
first time.
the first time, right? He gave me the money. The thing that was interesting was I was using emotional resilience skills to go have that conversation, even though I was afraid. And what I've learned through all the coaching I've done is that a lot of people, they don't know how to manage their fear. And so the fact that they're afraid stops them from having that conversation. So they don't get gear for their team, and their team doesn't trust that the team lead has their back. And so their performance goes down. And as soon as you can start working on managing your fear and going to do things that are scary, but they're good for your people, their performance gets better. And so having emotional resilience skills is super important. The third part of this is communication, getting over my social anxiety. Number one, really diving deep in industrial espionage for good across the organization, right?
Yep.
And communication and being able to present things in such a way that the audience has an easy time saying yes. And so part of that is when you're doing your industrial espionage, you're doing your research, you're figuring out other people's success metrics and presenting whatever it is in their success metrics so that they go, oh, now I see the benefit. And so one of the companies I was at, I had to change a bunch of business processes because we were re-architecting the core technology stack. And I had to get the people that were actually operating the tools to be fans of this new process that we wanted to do.
Okay.
Because it would save them time, right? It would reduce their headache factor. And so, from the tech side, it was, it reduces our server load, right? We can drop our AWS cost. That makes the CTO happy, by the way, when you drop your AWS costs.
Of course.
Right? Right. So, but the operators don't care about AWS. They just care about how fast things work and their operational throughput. And so I've got to be able to talk about business process, two different audiences, two completely different ways. The tech guy, the CTO, I start with, how would you like to reduce your AWS fees? And he's all ears, right?
Yep.
And by the way, just so you're comfortable, I already ran this by operations. They see this as being a 20 to 40% time savings on their operational metrics, which makes them happy, right? So he knows that I've already done the homework. Yep. So being able to present effectively is ridiculously important. This changes your perspective on power dynamics, because once you start talking to the execs, you never ever again will think it's above my pay grade, right? Okay. And this is another one of those self-limiting beliefs that I hear from a lot of team leads is, it's above my pay grade, I can't go do that, right? And I'm like, yeah, that's just not a thing for me, right? Yep. If I can see if
you can communicate the right way, then nothing's off limits, really.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that opens all kinds of doors for promotions and projects and happier teams, right? We get to work on the cool stuff, right? We get our pick of projects. And so something comes in, like there's 5 different projects to work on, and I go to the team and go, look, we can do whatever we want, right? We've proven that we're really good. What do you guys want? Like, our reward is we get to pick the project that we want to work on. We get first crack. What do you guys want to do? Right. And they're like, oh, okay. Now they have ownership, right?
Yep, they choose, they're invested, and they're not being forced probably into a certain mold or a style of working, which is what the CTOs would have been doing before you came in
Right.
to understand all
Yeah.
this and put it all together.
Yeah. And so now they're super happy because it's their choice. I'm not deciding, right? And so when you've got that level, now you can talk to anybody. Power Dynamics make it easy. And then I just make everything habits. I schedule everything. I use my calendar. I try to systematize everything, and that way it's easy for me to just do the process, number one.
Yeah.
But also I can teach other people. It's a very transferable skill set. And so anybody else in the team that wants to learn how to do this stuff, I'm like, yeah, no problem. Here, I'll teach you, advance your career.
Get a Starbucks and just ask the barista what they're doing, and then that's the first step.
Exactly. That's step one.
Yeah.
Right.
Once you can systemize something and you make it consistent, then that's when you see things snowball over time and you see the difference actually occur.
I think a lot of it also is and maybe this is just because of having done things before I got into tech, is really looking at things through the critical thinking lens and not just taking things at face value. And I always want more data, more proof, more, let me see how that works in the real world. And then let me try and experiment with it a bit, right? Let me try and apply that to my situation and see what happens. And, being here, there's been one of the benefits or curses, I'm not sure which, of being in Silicon Valley is we're at the very beginning of every hype cycle. And so, people get all excited and, the media is all excited about whatever. And I've seen so many things where there's been a ton of hype and it hasn't panned out. And so now I'm not sure jaded's the right way to put it, but I'm definitely not buying into hype just because 16 journalists are talking about it. Because I've seen so many things crater.
Probably a bit more weary about the news.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, this sounds a lot like the hype cycle of whatever it was, right?
Whatever it is.
Yeah, there's been so many of them. And so then I'm starting to think, okay, now, how would I really use that? What is the real benefit? What are the downsides to it? And what is the problem that it's really solving that my team actually deals with on a daily basis, right? And then talk with them and say, will this help you? What do you think? Should we experiment with it? Should we try it out and see what happens? And my teams have done experiments with lots of things over the years, most of which we never adopted.
Yeah, and that's very common because the tech's not there or it doesn't actually solve. So Bitcoin, you can just use a database. Very little cases where you need a distributed ledger that's verifiable by anyone.
Exactly.
Agents are the thing now where some agents may work. 99% of use cases, it's just a repetitive process. Very few use cases are where something is unknown and you need a computer to go and sort it out on its own. I think we can probably pick this up in another episode if you're happy to come back, because I'm just conscious of time and we've got to have to cut this one off now.
Yeah, no problem. No, this has been fun.
But we can probably jump back in and talk about hype cycles and how to stay relevant and understand that sort of stuff. Because
of course, yeah, be happy to.
Right there in the valley, you're not in the hype cycle. They're creating the hype cycles there. It's a very different space.
Right, exactly.
This has been a really awesome chat. I didn't know where we were going to go. If anyone wants to reach out and find out more about you, Bill, how can they do that?
Well, the easiest thing is to go to our website, 40pb.com, or you can look me up on LinkedIn. My email is bill@40pb.com. Super simple. Or hello@40pb.com. And happy to talk about any of the stuff with anybody.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll put those links into the show notes, and we'll try and get you in for a part 2. But thank you again for taking your time out of your day in your lovely spot there, and looking forward to the next episode. Thanks.
Sounds good. Thanks, man.
Bye.